Now
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It is 6:07 on O'Connor and Company. Thanks for tuning in here. It's hour 2, where we have been spending most of our time answering the New York Magazine's questions. Are Republican women okay? And Julie Gunlock's here to provide the wellness check. Are you guys okay?
Oh, I'm a little filled with rage this morning because of this New York Magazine
Good.
piece.
Keep that attitude. In fact, keep that rage going right through November. We gotta remind everybody just how okay we are. Listen, coming up, we got much to get to at 6:35. Tim Kennedy of Daily Signal has been doing some great work cracking down on the unregistered mopeds in D.C. that the Democrats are just fine with, allowing to wreak havoc in neighborhoods. 7:05, Maryland State Senator Justin Reedy. At 7:35, Nick Minnock of Channel 7. 8:05, Rich Anderson, Virginia Republican chair, as today is primary day in Virginia. And then at 8:35, Tom Bevan, Real Clear Politics. That's Julie Gunlock, as already introduced. She neglected to let you know that I'm Larry O'Connor. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning. Good morning, Larry.
I don't know what's wrong with me. So we mentioned this yesterday, and it looks like today is the day this initiative from Joe Biden, which will be unconstitutional, it will be challenged, it will be blocked, it will eventually be reversed. But by the time it is reversed, of course, all of the illegal immigrants that Joe Biden has promised amnesty to will have thought that they had their path to citizenship. And then it will be blocked by those mean, ugly Republicans who dare to say, maybe you should follow the Constitution, old man. And so conservatives will be the bad guys again because they don't want to open up the candy store and just give everything that anybody wants, even if they're stealing it. You know what this is? This is the video of those people with masks barging into a jewelry store in San Francisco, taking whatever they want and walking away. And if you call security or call the police or say, hey, that's against the law,
get fired.
You're the problem. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And so here, the latest variation of this amnesty plan, which, I forgot this great part. CBS News is referring to this as immigration relief. This is so if you hear the White House using those words, you know that either they floated it to CBS News to get it out there, or and I think this is happening more often than not, they're taking the cue from the media. They're like, immigration relief, that's a good one. We'll use that one.
Because people and people always conflate immigration and border policy.
That's right.
So, yeah.
So it's immigration, not amnesty, mind you. This is a program to decriminalize hundreds of thousands of illegal aliens in this country who continue to break our laws, who have not had any due process, who have not gone through any due process to actually become a legal naturalized citizen, and who continue to violate either employment laws or documentation identification laws, a whole host of laws beyond just overstaying their initial travel visa or student visa, or actually physically crossing our border illegally in the first place. That was just the first law that they broke. There have been many others. Joe Biden is going to give them sweeping amnesty and allow them a pathway to citizenship. And it will be all unilateral. It will be done through executive order. It will be unconstitutional. It's his own version of the DREAM Act. By the way, if this is such an epidemic that needed to be done, why did he wait 3.5 years to do it instead of doing it in the summer of a presidential election? And you know the answer why. And if you stand up and raise your hand and object to it, you're the hate monger, you're the racist, you're the xenophobe. And the latest iteration here is that these are for illegal immigrants who are married to U.S. citizens. What's wrong with you? Why don't you support marriage?
Why do you want to break up families?
Why don't you? It's let people be in love. What's the matter with you? You're a problem. You're a hate monger. And here we are.
People should be prepared in the last few months of his presidency for these types of things. We've all talked about how the Democrats are panicked. We've talked about every time Biden is seen on camera, and they're going to try to limit his exposure, I think, in the next several months. I really do. I think, they'll trot him out for the debates. They're now pushing to have to allow him to sit down at the debates. That's the latest sort of change to the rules. So they'll try to sort of they'll use sort of stagecraft to make sure he looks acceptable. But we're going to see these sort of last minute policy, because I think they know Biden's in real trouble, that that Trump really may get elected, and this is their sort of last chance to push things through. So I think that we will see more and more of these sort of last minute, insane, unconstitutional policies. And part of it, but there's a strategy here, not just to push through, policies that they want, but also to set it up so that Trump looks like the bad guy if there's mass deportations, if there's any reversals of these things.
Maybe. I think you're. I don't think you're wrong. I think that those things are going to happen.
Thank you.
I think they're going to happen a little bit closer. No, but I think that this is actually more about trying to win the election than it is about conceding defeat and just saying, well, let's just push through whatever we can. And let me be clear. This has nothing to – everyone is like, oh, look at him pandering to the Hispanic vote. Actually, no. This has nothing to do with the Hispanic vote. In fact, the majority of Hispanics right now, 53% of Hispanic Americans in the last poll – favor mass deportation of illegal immigrants in this country.
And that's sort of why I am where I am. But go on. Sorry.
This is about white suburban women. This is to appeal to the compassionate. Oh, why do we have to be so mean? These are just people who are here. So who cares if they have a document or not? Who cares if they're legally in the country? They're now married. They should be allowed to stay. I don't want to break up. This is meant to touch on all the feels of the Chardonnay drinking white women. Every single thing this campaign does and this White House does is about those votes, because that's all they've got. That's the only chance they have. And so when Donald Trump and conservatives and Republicans dare to step up and point to the rule of law and basic fairness and how we have to have an orderly immigration process in this country, and by the way, this is just a distraction from the nightmare that is border security that leads to the murder and rape of those white suburban women, by the way. Right. When we point that out, we're the problems. We're awful. We're hate mongers. We're trying to get in the way of a married couple who are just trying to raise their family, and that's the narrative. And it's not. Trust me, it's not about the Latino vote. It's about white suburban women who can be easily swayed by their emotions. Your friends,
my friends. Oh my God, I have no friends. But I look, I will tell you that is the reason, and we've mentioned this on the show before, that Republicans have got to hammer home that the inhumanity, the human rights scandal that is going on the border, and the fact that the Biden administration has lost track of 85,000 children, undocumented children. And in fact, in his executive order, they made an exception for children. So more children will be coming over more unaccompanied children will be coming over this border, where they will be sold into slavery or sexually abused or murdered. And the Biden administration has no way of tracking them. So, I mean, I hope the Republicans push back but I think this is something that really will pull at the heartstrings of even liberal women.
Let me just be clear on what this is, though. This is DACA. They're coming up with their own version of DACA.
Yeah.
Okay. Which DACA was, of course, for children who were brought here as minors illegally, stayed in the country, and Obama gave sweeping amnesty for all of them. By the way, 12 years later, that's still being challenged in court. The final constitutionality of the DREAM Act is still up for question 12 years later. This is how they do it. They know they can't do it. It's just like the student loan thing. They just push it through, and years from now, they'll let it be adjudicated, right? And let me be clear. They're passing it today, 12 years after the DREAM Act and the DACA relief that Obama put through. They are, in fact, acknowledging the 12-year anniversary of that. And let's think for a minute. Hold on. If it's a 12-year anniversary, that means it's a 4-year cycle. That means Obama did the DREAM Act and DACA and gave relief to the illegal immigrant children who were in this country illegally right in the middle of a presidential election, right when he was running for re-election. It's almost like this is a cynical political act to garner votes from people and to make another divisive issue to paint Republicans as evil hate mongers, and has nothing to do with actually what's best for the country. It's like they just do this on election years. And if you're thinking that, it's because that's true. That's really all this is.
Yeah.
And it's wrong. And we'll fight it, and we'll eventually win, but it could well work for them politically. Because, suburban white women, who we love, by the way, when they tune into the radio program. We're just trying to, We're trying to affect you. We're trying to correct you. We're trying to redirect you. And then you can take the truth and our message to your neighbors and your friends who are really the problem. Not you. You're good. 6:16. Let's get straight to Jamie Whitten. She's a suburban white woman. She's in the Hadid Carpet Cleaning Traffic Center.
Uh-huh. And you know
You're
what's
one of the
right?
good ones.
This is what's right. 50 out of an app.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live.
From the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
On the next Vince Coglianese show, the mother of the grandchild Joe Biden refused to acknowledge. London Roberts joins us 3 to 6 right here on WMAL.
My heart is broken for the Morin family, as is our entire state. She should still be here. And the sheriff is absolutely right. I mean, we have an immigration policy that needed to have been dealt with and was not. And the consequences then fall on us as the chief executives of our states. The consequences fall on us as the leaders of our individualized jurisdictions. And we know that we have got to fix a broken immigration policy, and we know that we need Congress to act on this. And this is why this was so unbelievably frustrating, that when you have a coalition that is a bipartisan coalition of both Democrats and Republicans that get literally right up to the line to be able to get a deal done, that because you had President Trump who said this was not advantageous politically, that the deal was killed. There is an unbelievable frustration, and this is what people don't like about politics. We've got to get this deal done, and we need Congress to act on it.
That's Wes Moore, governor of Maryland, who was on CBS's Face the Nation, reacting to the murder of a Maryland woman at the hands of an illegal immigrant criminal who was in this country because of Joe Biden's lax border security policies, pointing the finger at Republicans for not pushing through or not going along with the so-called bipartisan border and immigration deal that was negotiated in the Senate. And I got to tell you, as much as I like James Lankford, he has got to come out and disavow his work on this thing. He did more damage to Republicans in this country during an election cycle than any Republican I can think of. He's worse than Larry Hogan on this because he made it look like there was, in fact, a reasonable deal, which there never was. And it allowed people like Wes Moore, who is really charming and has a great smile. So, gosh, he makes me feel so good about myself. It allows Wes Moore to stand up there and say, yeah, the murder of this Maryland woman is outrageous. And if only we had passed this bill that would have allowed 4,500 people to cross this border illegally every day without any consequence. And if only we had given amnesty to this murderer while he was here. See, this bill that Wes Moore is now blaming for the murder of the woman, all that bill would have done, had it been signed into law, would have allowed that murderer and 4,499 more of them to cross this border illegally every single day. And if they were apprehended here in this country, it would have given them amnesty to stay here legally so they could murder more people. But where was the host of CBS's Face the Nation to say that to him? Excuse me, sir, what are you talking about? This bill would have done nothing to keep this murderer from coming into this country, and you know that. But you're happy and you're smiling. You've got a great resume, and you're going to be president. So God bless you, Wes Moore. Thanks for being here on CBS's Face the Nation.
Larry, I totally agree, but and I agree with you that where is James Lankford? Where is he? Why is he not coming out and pushing back on this? It's absolutely disgusting.
He should be front and center. James Lankford should be exposing the lies about this ridiculous bill that he helped negotiate that wasn't going anywhere. And it's now being used. God, we're stupid. And honestly, Republicans are so stupid.
They're so stupid. But also for Wes Moore to use this woman's death to in any way promote this idea that it was a Republican's fault and turn this into a political thing. And then say that, it was, they're making it political. It's a level of, it's so despicable.
Joe Biden is going to get glowing coverage today when he signs this unconstitutional, illegal, and irrational unilateral amnesty for criminal aliens in this country who have been here and have been fortunate enough to find someone to marry. Oh, yeah. And so they're going to get sweeping amnesty for hundreds of thousands. And they're going to say, see, this is the sort of immigration reform that we need in this country.
This is the leadership we needed in this country.
That's right.
Yeah.
And at no point is anyone going to stand up and say, excuse me, but this doesn't do, literally does nothing to solve the problem you've created. Because whenever they talk about, oh, well, we need comprehensive immigration reform, what they mean is we keep the border exactly as open as it is right now, and everyone who was allowed in to the country is given legal status. That's what they mean. Okay. And it literally changes nothing. It actually makes the problem worse. But on the upside, it ushers in a whole new host of voters, and I wonder who they'll vote for. The people who gave them something free and against the law. That's who. It's 6:23.
Now,
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
Oh, dear. Dear, oh, dear, oh, dear. It's 6:37 now. It's O'Connor and Company. We're just trying to make sense of all of it. Thanks for tuning in here on a busy Tuesday morning, primary day in Virginia. To that end, we got you covered here, starting at 7:05 with Maryland State Senator Justin Reedy on Governor Wes Moore's latest executive order on emissions and climate. Oh, and taxes. Then at 7:35, Nick Minnock, Channel 7. 8:05, the chairman of the Republican Party in Virginia, Rich Anderson. And then at 8:35, Tom Bevan of Real Clear Politics. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
You know, our friends over at the Daily Signal, and they are our friends, they have gone through a huge, momentous shift there as, I don't know if you saw this, they started, of course, under the umbrella of the Heritage Foundation.
Yes.
And they were basically a publication of some original reporting, columns, things like that. They've now broken off as their own standalone publication under the leadership of Rob Bluey, who conceived of this entire vision of the Daily Signal, I want to say 10 or 11 years ago.
Yeah.
And boy, they've hit the ground running in their first couple of weeks with some great original reporting, including some stories at the hands of our next guest, Tim Kennedy, who's been reporting on this rampant use of unregistered, unauthorized motorized vehicles in Washington, D.C., that this has been going on for years now and wreaking absolute criminal havoc in neighborhoods that can't afford additional mayhem. And finally, because of Tim Kennedy's reporting, it looks like D.C. police are doing something about it. Tim, thanks for joining us, and congratulations on everything I just described.
Thank you so much, Larry, for having me on. I really appreciate it.
You and Virginia Allen did the reporting on the use of these motor vehicles. Tell me exactly what it is. I think a lot of us have seen this when we've been in D.C., or we've at least seen videos of it, but these are basically gangs of young people who were breaking the law with these motor vehicles, right?
That's exactly right, Larry. And really the beginning of the story started around January of this year when I myself began to notice a massive increase in the amount of mopeds and motorcycles on the streets of our nation's capital. At least how it initially started, a lot of these drivers, many of whom were delivering food, or so we believed, had no regard for the most basic of traffic laws and were driving without license plates. So we had a lot of questions as to how these individuals were doing it, how they were getting away with it, and a lot of these individuals seemed to be, at least initially appeared to be, of Latin American descent. And if these were in fact the fabled illegal aliens who had been coming to D.C. en masse since the start of the Biden administration, I wanted to know how they were buying and driving these motorcycles and mopeds without driver's licenses.
And again, without any enforcement of those laws. You know, if I drive through D.C. and my car registration is expired, I'm going to see lights in my rearview mirror. I'm going to get pulled over and I'm going to get a citation. But cops seemingly just ignored this. Did you learn, was that a dictate from above that they're just to look the other way?
At least initially with our investigation, and we launched it around March and April of this year, we interviewed about a dozen or so of these drivers, many of whom had come to the U.S. illegally within the past 4 years, that we asked them, well, you know, it appears that you're driving this vehicle without registration, insurance, like you understand that you need this to drive, and almost all of them would say, yes, I understand that, but the police are not enforcing the law, or at least are not pulling me over, so there's nothing deterring me from doing what I'm doing, or there's nothing incentivizing me from going to the DMV and getting the proper registration. They all knew the laws were on the book. They knew which laws they had to follow. There was no law enforcement authority, though, enforcing it, so there was no incentive for them to just go. And, it was insane, I will be honest.
I know you've also probably talked to the police in D.C. What's their excuse? I mean, we've also seen video of them terrorizing tourists on the National Mall.
Yeah.
It really scary, actually going off road and it really alarming, keeping people away from the city, frankly. What's the DC police's excuse for not enforcing the law?
Initially, I think it was a spokesperson told us being Virginia Allen and my other colleague, Kristen Lasval from the Daily Signal, that these drivers were, quote, testing their luck, end quote. Well, how do you test your luck when you're just doing it in broad daylight in front of police? That was like the most amazing response we could have gotten. And they tied it initially to their, I think it was a zero traffic crime initiative, and they went off on their press release about, tamping down on, cars speeding and whatnot. So they kind of just turned a blind eye to this phenomena, again, as it was happening in broad daylight. No one was hiding the fact that this was happening. They were all just looking the other way.
I love this. You cross the border illegally and Border Patrol looks the other way. And everyone crossing the border illegally knows that they're breaking the law, but it's not going to be enforced. Then they come to D.C., they get a motorized vehicle, they start tearing up the streets, they're driving on the sidewalks, they're terrorizing tourists. They know it's against the law, but the cops don't enforce the law, so what's the point? Boy, America really is the land of opportunity. Tim Kennedy, here's the upside. Your reporting at Daily Signal has actually gotten results. What's the latest out of the D.C. Metro Police?
Yes, so I think the latest numbers from yesterday were that over 200 mopeds have been impounded, 207 citations given out, and 67 people have been arrested for operating these vehicles without proper licenses and registration. So we definitely see, I think that number of 200 mopeds also, and mind you, D.C. police and a lot of people will tell you, oh, these are just like flimsy little mopeds that are being impounded. No, in our investigating and as we've seen on the streets, these are, vehicles with engines over 150 cc's. So by D.C. law, they're technically actually motorcycles. And these are, they're capable of speeds over 50 miles an hour. So when you have these people terrorizing tourists and driving on sidewalks and bike lanes, they're doing it with definitely with not their safety in mind, but nor the safety of others, for sure. So that's been the most recent law and response from D.C. police. We have two council people, Brianne Nadeau and Charles Allen, both facing tough recall attempts in the district, and they are proposing an amendment to a recent law that already exists. And I will tell your listeners that this, as with most democratic laws, they're passed with the best of intentions, but they tend to hurt lawful residents, especially when it comes to gun owners, for instance. And this law, it's more of a slap on the wrist. Essentially, they're making it so that way legal businesses that rent out mopeds have to register their fleets, and that motorcycle and moped dealers had to provide customers with a list of DC DMV requirements.
It's so ridiculous. Can you imagine if you go to buy a car and the automobile manufacturer, the dealer is required to give you an entire list of the laws for driving in DC? It's insanity. And that's Charles Allen trying to do a fig leaf there to keep himself from being recalled so he can say he did something. But of course, you don't have to do anything. The laws are already there. Enforce the freaking laws in this city. Tim Kennedy. Good Lord, what a mistake that was. You're not Tim Miller by any stretch of the imagination. Tim Kennedy of Daily Signal doing more to improve conditions in Washington, D.C. in just 2 weeks there with the Daily Signal's new rebirth compared to decades of a much larger budgeted Washington Post Metro section who's just ignored this story for years. Thanks, Tim. Great work. Give our best to everyone at the Daily Signal. We're appreciating what you're doing, and we look forward to doing more with you.
Thank you for having me on.
You bet. It is 6:45 WMAL traffic and weather every 10 minutes. First on the fives. The man who represents science showed up on the Stephen Colbert Late Show yesterday. Of course, we're talking about Anthony Fauci. And if you were expecting Stephen Colbert to ask any significant or cutting questions about some of the latest revelations we've learned about Fauci and the emails and Wuhan and what he knew and when he knew it, well, you'll be greatly disappointed. No, it began with Stephen Colbert telling the 83-year-old disgraced former health official that he looked so spry and lively, and whether he'd ever consider running for president or not, which...
It's such a suck-up.
God help us all.
I mean, can you imagine?
Although it is worth noting that, accidentally, Stephen Colbert, in praising Anthony Fauci at 83 years old for his ability to, walk across a stage and keep focus and maintain a conversation without slurring his words, he's actually pointing out how debilitated our current president is at 2 years younger than Fauci. But then he had this revelation. Do we have the audio of this revelation by any chance? No? All right, well, let me just describe what happened here. We're having a technical problem with our recording devices. Fauci revealed that Donald Trump was very angry with him during the COVID-19 pandemic. He berated him. He dropped F-bombs at him.
Gasp.
Saying that he couldn't keep, undermining the administration and putting out these statements. Quoting Fauci, he said he loved me, but the country was in trouble and I was making it worse. He added that the stock market went up only 600 points in response to the positive phase 1 vaccine news, and it should have gone up 1,000 points, so I cost the country $1 trillion. But he said that he was a very tough boss and he would be really angry and drop F-bombs at him in saying that Fauci was not doing a good enough job. And I got to say, this is going to help Trump in the polls by at least 3 or 4 points.
Exactly. Fauci drops this, truth bomb, thinking it'll hurt Trump. No. If there's any time where, maybe the F-bomb was appropriate, it was during COVID.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, really. Oh, honestly, I was using the F-bomb in association with this guy's name so much that I basically replaced it. Fauci you mother Foucher. Honestly, he is the new F word. 6:50.